This episode contains material that may be triggering to some individuals. Please check the show notes for more information and be mindful of your own mental health and comfort levels. Hey, it's Chelsea. Welcome to Quiet Confessions. No fancy setup, just some honest thoughts and a quiet moment with you and me. Happy Thursday. I'm really liking being able to put out these mini episodes with just my thoughts and my ramblings. And it seems like you guys are coming along for the ride, so I really appreciate it. Just at the top here, I want to encourage you, if you feel seen, if you resonate with anything that I talk about, if there's something you want to know more about, please, 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 you can DM me on any of my social media accounts, Quiet Connection Podcast, or leave a rating and review. Honest feedback is always welcome. Or you can shoot me an email at quietconnectionppmh@gmail.com. But yeah, I want to know what you guys are here for and what's hitting home and what's not and what you want to know more about. Today, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into how I navigate triggers because they are everywhere for me. And that may well be the case for you as well. But so a trigger, if you are unfamiliar, is something that sort of awakens a trauma response within you. It usually happens when you experience something that is tied to a trauma or just overwhelms your nervous system in some way. So I'll talk to you a little bit about my triggers, and I'll talk to you about how I navigate them because it's relevant for me. I just experienced something that was, I experience things every day, but I just went through an experience that was very triggering for me, but I did it and I made it through way better than I anticipated. So we'll just dive in. So triggers for me are everywhere, because my trauma is tied to birth trauma and medical trauma and, those first 6 months of motherhood, I missed almost all of it, so much of it. So it's also tied to motherhood and grief. And I'm not going to go through and list every single thing that contributed to my trauma, but the major things were my postpartum hemorrhage, which I had at home about 5 days after I had my daughter in 2022, because I was bleeding out and it was a big deal. And that triggered my OCD and sent me into a pretty big spiral. So that was kind of the first big alarm bell. And then in terms of motherhood, being so physically and mentally ill, those first 6, 7, 8, 9 months of my daughter's life, I was not able to be present for a lot of it. And even when I was present, I was very sick. So I have flashbacks to a lot of the time that I spent in hospitals, either for physical medical reasons or psychiatric inpatient experiences. I get flashbacks to that a lot. I have a lot of grief surrounding missing the newborn and infant experience with my youngest daughter. And yeah, there's a lot more. We can get into that on its own episode. And then the next biggest trauma was in March of 2024 when they discovered I had a pituitary tumor because it ruptured, and I was bleeding into my brain. So that landed me in the ICU, and then I was hospitalized on the neurological floor or the neurosurgery floor for a while, and then for months I was babysat while they let the tumor bleed out rather than do surgery. Again, that can be its own topic for its own day, but so those things combined equal an intense trauma response from anything medical related. And it can be the smallest thing, well, what I consider the smallest thing to the biggest thing. So even seeing and hearing ambulances elicits a response in my body. Like my heart rate goes up, my heart jumps into my throat, especially if I see an ambulance from my town or on my road. Yeah, that can set me off. Not in terms of a complete meltdown, but it definitely triggers a trauma response. Any sort of medical appointment, and I have a lot of them. Ever since the tumor rupture, my pituitary gland, it doesn't function. And so I have a whole host of teams that work with me because as a result of that experience, my body has changed completely. My body chemistry has changed. So I work with endocrinology. I work with neurosurgery, neuro-ophthalmology, cardiology. I'm starting with pulmonology. I'm trying to remember all of them. And I have my primary care physician, and I also work with a psychiatrist, as well as my psychotherapist. So I have a big team, and nothing is really sorted out right now. I still am experiencing symptoms. Every day. I am disabled and chronically ill. I know I sound like a broken record, but that's what my life is right now. I'm learning to accept that doesn't have to be my life forever, potentially, but right now that's where I'm at. So I am sick quite a bit, and that in and of itself is triggering. I literally just got a high heart rate alert on my watch. And I think it's because I'm talking about these things. But yeah, I have to visit the ER pretty regularly. I have lots of specialist visits. I have lots of just like regular maintenance visits. The ER visits, ED visits, we call it the ED here, are the hardest. And I go into a full panic attack if I even have the slightest idea that I may need to go to the emergency room. It's very, very difficult, and it takes a lot of planning, and you can't prepare when you have to go to the emergency room. But this last time that I went was one of the best experiences, and it's because I literally used every tool in my toolbox. The downside to that was that I delayed going for days, which I shouldn't have done. But in that time, I collected all of my comfort items. I was talking frequently with friends who make me feel safe and that I can trust. And anyway. So the experience that I'm specifically referring to, not that experience, but if you follow along on social media, I recently had to go in for a sleep study. I originally did the sleep study at home, but it was inconclusive, of course. And so I had to go into my local hospital to do the sleep study. And it is incredibly triggering for me to go into any medical establishment. So at least with this, I had time to prepare. And I had doctors explaining to me that where I would be wouldn't feel like a hospital room. It would feel like a hotel room. And that was true, except the bed was incredibly uncomfortable. And there were no amenities. I literally checked in. I had to check in through the ED, which was challenging. But I checked in through the ED at 8 p.m. and got shown to my room. It took an hour for them to hook me up to everything, all the electrodes and all that stuff. Luckily, the guy that I was working with was so nice and so funny. And we just laughed about being millennials and flip phones and razors, the phones, and AIM instant messenger. And yeah, so this guy put me completely at ease. I mean, not completely, but as at ease as I could have been. And I brought with me like my own pillow, and I brought my Kindle, and I brought a comfort object, and I had my eye massager just in case, like all of the tools that I know work for me to keep me regulated. And having preparation, knowing what I was going into, was incredibly helpful. And taking you guys along with me, so I took little video snippets along the way, and that gave me a job to do, which distract is one of my DBT skills that I use most often. DBT, if you follow me on social media, I've referred to it a few times, but DBT really is dialectical behavioral therapy is what really, really works for me. They are real skills and tools that you can actively use when you are in distress or feel like you are going to be in distress. And I use them all day, every day. So what got me through the sleep study and being in an environment that would otherwise be very triggering was being prepared ahead of time, bringing things that I knew would cause me to distract myself, focus on something else, and just knowing all I have to do is sleep and get up and I can go home. I don't have to stay here. And I reminded myself of that over and over and over again. And ultimately, I did not sleep very much at all. But I guess they got what they needed because they didn't tell me that I had to come back and do it again. I haven't had my results yet. But I was proud of myself when I left because, I mean, I did it. I know this sounds silly. If you don't experience trauma responses or if you don't experience like really extreme anxiety, or I don't know, maybe if you experience anxiety at all, like the smallest wins are still huge wins. Like they're all huge wins. So just the fact that I went there, I did sleep a little bit and then I left. That is a huge accomplishment. I spent the rest of that day doing everything and anything that would bring me peace and joy and just listening to my body because I was pretty escalated. But it worked. And I don't know. I just took the time to notice and be proud of myself. And yeah, it felt good to accomplish that on my own. I didn't have anyone with me. No one brought me. No one picked me up. I did it all by myself. And yeah, it's just a step in the right direction. But I want to acknowledge that like everybody's triggers are going to be different. And my triggers are maybe completely different than your triggers. And no trigger is invalid. Something that is difficult right now is that a lot of people will use these terms when really they're just talking about day-to-day anxiety. I've heard people say like, oh, I'm having an anxiety attack. Like, I don't think I can make it to all my appointments. And for some people that may be anxiety attack inducing, but for others, you're just a little overwhelmed. And that's valid too. But it's tricky when you start talking about triggers. In the political climate, which I'm not going to get too big into, it is often used to diminish people's experiences. Like, oh, you're so triggered. You're so triggered by everything. And I want to be clear that like triggers are real things. And the opposite of them is something that I like to talk about a lot and something that I focus a lot of my energy on, which are glimmers. They're the opposite of a trigger. And it is intentionally seeking out things in your life, in your day, that bring you joy and bring you peace. And again, that is a skill. That is something that I work on. And it is not invalidating the experience of a trauma response or a trigger. It is instead also allowing space for the joy and for the calm and for the peace. So I feel like I'm getting really preachy, and that's not what I'm trying to do at all. I'm just trying to tell you that I had a sleep study and I'm really proud of myself that I did it. But yeah, like this is life, man. Like things are going to get you anxious. Things are going to get you dysregulated. Things are going to get you overwhelmed. I have to remind myself every day that that's okay, and that this sounds super simple and silly. I have to remind myself I'm going to survive. I'm going to survive this. These super uncomfortable feelings. This is shout out to my therapist. These uncomfortable feelings are going to happen, and I'm going to survive them. And I know that sounds a little silly if you don't experience that, but it's the same thing in early motherhood. When you're going through a sleep regression, or when you have a very colicky baby, or if you have a baby with medical needs, This feels really, really hard because it is really, really hard, but you're going to survive. You're going to get up, and every day is going to be a little different. And some days are going to be a little harder than others. Today I'm having a hard day. You're not supposed to date your podcast recordings, but today is June 14th, and I am attending a protest. Again, this isn't about political stances or whatever, but I'm attending a protest and I'm a little nervous. And I'm not nervous because I feel like I shouldn't do it. I'm just nervous because of the climate. But I'm also excited. I'm excited to participate. This is not my first protest, but it's a big one. And so I'm recognizing that I have anxiety and I'm feeling these feelings, but I'm also looking for the glimmer that I'm doing this with my partner. We're looking at it as kind of like a date day, which is really exciting. And then we have another really exciting meeting afterwards, which hopefully I can tell you about in the next episode. But that is a potentially game-changing meeting for our family. So yeah, more on that maybe next week. But I don't know. I feel like I rambled a lot, but that's what these are. It's just my time to chat with you and let you know where I'm at. But yeah, I wanted to talk about triggers and glimmers and celebrate my wins. So that's it for this little confession. Go drink some water, take a nap. I will be doing that later. And know that you're not alone. And I'll see you next week.
If parenting had a hotline, this would be it. Odd Moms on Call is where bold moms sound off on the real, messy side of motherhood.
From mental health to political BS, we dive into the topics others avoid.
No filter, no fluff.
Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Buzzsprout, and join the call that always keeps it real.